Coulson's deal with Ghost Rider is revealed in an emotional roller coaster ride that honors a journey 5 years in the making. It's the 100th episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 5, Episode 12. The Real Deal. Hey everyone, D here, and welcome to this week's review, the big 100th episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So, yeah, there are going to be spoilers ahead. And you know, before we get started, this episode was billed as an episode for the fans. And so before I get into the review proper, I'd actually like to take a moment and talk about you and me, all of us, the fans. Because Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. to me has always been the sort of central hub of the MCU. It's kind of the connection point where films and all of the Netflix shows and everything else can sort of get referred to and bounce back and forth. And it was one of those things when the MCU started up, when they talked about everything being connected. I think there was a lot of expectations with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. to really have a larger connection with the MCU. And outside of really the first season, we haven't had a lot of it. And there's been a lot of, you know, kind of negative talk over the years over this wondrous show. The Netflix are grittier, you know, the films are bigger. And yes, you know, it takes every show a little bit to get its feet underneath them. But this show has really paid off over the years to be something of incredible writing, great character work, and some beautiful visual effects work by Mark Kolpak. Let's just take a moment and recognize him and his team's incredible stuff. But all of this has been fueled, even through the rough spots, and even getting this season and moving forward, fueled by the fans. The passion that the fans for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. feel for this show. And it's not just viewing parties and big tweets and, you know, constant renewal, urges to renew Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but incredible cosplay work, great fiction, I mean, just really passionate dedication to this show, and some incredible visual artwork. I don't know if you guys know Ep12, but I've been following her on Twitter for ages, and she does incredible work. In fact, when she did her recent poster for the big 100th episode, I thought that was the official Marvel poster for it. I was super excited, and I looked down at the bottom, and Ep12's name is right down there. So, really, some incredible work that, honestly, I think inspires a lot of the actual Marvel poster work that comes out. But it's not just her. We have Janeene over at Loudest Dork, who also does some great individual poster work there for characters, but also little bits of fun as well. I mean, we have all of these incredibly talented people really not just messing around with paper on pen, but really putting a lot of work to make quality imagery that really pulls at the heart and passion for this show. And I haven't even gotten into all of the shippers, the people who have seen the relationships in the show blossom and really are pulling for them. I mean, we have, of course, Fitzs, who gets their big night tonight, but we also have Macarena, who's getting a nice little connection here. We have, well, all of Daisy's stuff from way back in Skyward to all the way up to Quake Rider. And the one true Felinda, let us not forget them. That, specifically, a relationship that has developed very naturally over the show, from the fans recognizing the chemistry that Ming-Na and Wen and Clark Gregg have together, to just seeing how those natural character evolutions happen. This is something that the fans feed into, and the show really works to honor. And even from a personal standpoint, one of the reasons I started D's Reviews was to talk about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I love this show. Its complexity, its character work, like I have said, and the community around. So, to all of you, all of the fans of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., thank you so much for supporting this wonderful show. And keep those tweets coming for renewing Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because we all know we want a season 6. Alright, and to the episode proper. Now we did learn a few important bits of information in this episode. First off, General Hale is responsible for the destruction of the Earth. Well, more specifically, it's her bomb that blows up the 3 monoliths and creates a giant rift that is probably the reason why all of Earth ends up getting destroyed. So that's kind of an important bit. And as we have tried to suspect the reasons why all of this has happened, we didn't know about the 3 monoliths. There was absolutely no way we could have predicted any of this. However, in order to fix this, Fitzs needs gravitonium. Specifically, to mend it for a moment, to put the Band-Aid on, he needs the gravitonium inside of Dekes' belt buckle, his little anti-gravity machine there. So that's what he uses in order to build the whole little bomby thing. The Coulson's got to get into the rift, but that also explains why the team starts going after gravitonium, and perhaps why there is so much after the Earth is all shattered. In order to patch this little rift, they were able to use a little bit of gravitonium that Dekes had in his belt buckle. However, in order to close it completely, they are going to need more. So that's going to be the search going forward, is to collect enough gravitonium in order to hopefully permanently seal the breach. I still think that that's where graviton comes in, because the last place any of the gravitonium they knew was in a giant bubble with graviton in the middle of it. So, yeah, I think that's where we're going next. Now, the second bit of information that we got this episode was, of course, how's Coulson dying? What was his deal with Ghost Rider? And that opens up really a lot of the emotional roller coaster ride that we got in this episode for very understandable reasons. And there was some great scenes really structured all around this journey for Phil this episode. Starting off, basically the moment where he does the sacrifice himself and everyone chases him out into the hallway saying, "No, you can't do it." Love Fitz volunteering Piper. I just have to say straight off right there. She said she'd do anything for us. We'll send her into the rift. You don't have to do it. But really it comes down to Daisy and Phil, which is of course what really a lot of this emotional movement happens in this episode. Well, between dad and daughter, and of course between mom and dad. So, but that whole sequence I think really frames everything up so nicely. How much that Phil is dedicated, that Daisy has to be here, that she is going to be the next generation, that she is going to be the leader. As he talks to May later on about that we're not going to last forever, despite how awesome you look. There has to be ready for a next generation. And of course, Daisy's very natural response, and it framed it perfectly. May is never going to be the same. And that's possibly the truth. An ACL tear is very difficult to come back 100% from. And Ming-Na's amazing, but there's a little bit of truth. And we even got the shot of May kind of acknowledging that. Mac is getting ready to quit again. Why? Because of the love of his life. The other strong fighter in the team just got literally cut to pieces. Piper, of course, has already betrayed them. Fitzsimmons, you don't want to put them in danger again. Lots of references to the timely nature of Fitzsimmons' relationship throughout this episode. But all of that, you don't want to put them in danger again. That leaves there's nobody left. And that's a good recurring bit that we have through this episode too, that thing that there is no S.H.I.E.L.D. left. There is no one else. This is all of what's left for the team. And for Phil there to really be pushing back, no, the reason, as he said many before, we have to be the S.H.I.E.L.D. That is important. That is what his whole life is structured around. So it was such a great framing of really the conflict that's going on with the agents and the kind of world around them and what they're trying to accomplish, which of course, falls into Phil collapsing where we get our big reveal of what's going on. And we have thought many times what could have caused this strange necrotic tissue going on with Phil. And it ends up being, yeah, it goes all the way back to the beginning. Again, beautiful arc through this episode, recognizing the journey over these past 5 years. Going all the way back to being killed by Loki. The scar tissue in his body, or the tissue that was healed because of the Kree blood, has gotten burned out with Ghost Rider in his body. As soon as Phil agreed to take Ghost Rider in, it burned that magical stuff out of him, and now that tissue is slowly, not dying, but almost reverting to a dead state. It was something that Gemma had put on. The tissue is dead. It's like it's been dead for several years. And I have to say, this is the one little thing that kind of threw me off, because in some ways it makes the Kree magic blood, that there is some additional prospect to it as opposed to just a healing property. Because if you heal something, it just rebuilds itself and it's back to normal. Now, I don't know, if maybe the traveling through time had done something, or the natural dimensional shift with Ghost Rider, more of a you were supposed to be dead, and so this is that kind of coming over, that might have worked a little bit more with me. But for the fact that burning out the effect of the Kree blood, it gives that Kree, the blood, kind of much more than just a healing property, more of a magical restorative property unto itself. So that was the only thing that kind of just rubbed me a little bit with the episode, but tiny, and I didn't mind it because, again, it refers everything back to the beginning. Back to the beginning of the show, how everything happened. And that really is something that plays important later on. But from this, we again have those emotional rides. Beautiful scene between Daisy and Phil, between daughter and dad there. How she's, you can't go and you're important and there is no S.H.I.E.L.D. without you. A sentiment I completely agree with. To the moments there with May, which again, the closest to a Felinda that we got in this, but still an acknowledgement. How much Phil was talking about, I didn't want to put this on a burden on you. And May's response of, it's my choice of who I waste my time on. You know, it was all very lovely. It really shows that emotional bit. And why we didn't get a kiss, we got a little sexy outfit reference. But theirs is a much more mature relationship, which I kind of appreciate. There's a love that doesn't require that sort of physical connection. Yes, they do want to have this, but they sort of have their priorities sort of set out for a moment. So I like the work. I hope they don't stretch out Felinda a little too much. These two deserve at least a moment of joy before Phil may spontaneously drop dead. But all of those, I have to say, this was the emotional center of this episode, and I think it really conveyed the strength of those relationships and what everyone sees in each other just beautifully well. I also have to agree that Coulson should have told the rest of the team what was going on there long beforehand. Especially, like Daisy pointed out, they saw Tessa brought back. They were there. They could have gotten more of the Kree blood. Phil's response, I didn't want to go through that again. Can kind of understand, but still, that's just... Timing's important, Phil, and you really have learned by now you gotta trust the team. And the third thing we learned this episode, of course, is that Dekes is terrified of forests. Outside and sticks and bugs terrifies him. Oh, and he's Fitzsimmons' grandkid. So, you know, little bit there. That was quite a very cool reveal at the end. The moment, of course, he mentions, yeah, the ring reminded me of my grandmother's ring. That was it. And then we got the confirmation from General Hale's little report there. That was an interesting little bit. One, did find out that, yes, that cop was calling General Hale. Didn't call in the team, but just made a report. So, yes, cop definitely calling in Daisy. And then it was Deke, who I guess made a whole bunch of calls into different towns or different areas in order to overload General Hale's people to think that there are Daisy sightings all over the place. I thought that was really clever. But Deke, of course, still the comic relief now in the episode. Orange scented spray, do not eat. A lot of this was great. But I love that his mission was to go out and recover team members. Because while in a lot of the earlier scenes, we are seeing that S.H.I.E.L.D. is, well, the people, they think that S.H.I.E.L.D. is, Daisy's saying specifically that S.H.I.E.L.D. is gone, there is no S.H.I.E.L.D. What we find out from Deke's mission is, that's not entirely true. And the fear dimension. Which was cool, I have to say. Not something that I expected was going to happen. I mean, I don't know what happens when 3 monoliths get destroyed next to each other, so not something that I could predict. But, I mean, it's a cool way to definitely show villains from years past. And I like the way that they sort of manifested that. I love that they're very realistic and can attack, you know, their fears solidified into reality. But when they're killed, how they sort of fell back into that little kind of smoke dissipation, I thought, just a real beautiful effect that's done. And we get to see kind of the breadth of these. We have fear in the sense of scared, of what you're scared of. The villains, the Kree attacking, Lash, Hive. But we also see a lot more of these subtle fears. We have like Yo-Yo. Oh God, going through so much. That scene with Mac and Yo-Yo. I can get through this as long as you're here. Oh, so touching. But Yo-Yo's fear there of not being able to help, of being helpless, of being a burden on people, and that manifesting as the creepy LMD Gemma, I'm going to say. Again, another wonderful thing. Again, much more of those subtle psychological feels, which I think really work perfectly in that scene with Phil going up to the rift, which is our Scene of the Week for this week. Because, while it's not necessarily as big as flashy as some of the other fight scenes, it's as emotional necessarily as Coulson revealing his trauma, his dying to everyone else, or even the kind of happy joy that we get later on with the Fitzsimmons wedding. This, I think, frames everything so nicely as dealing in with the subtle psychological fears that Phil has, as he thinks, as he had talked with May before, that he's ready to die, or he's accepted death, but he's not ready to do it quite yet. To the realization that no, he isn't really ready for death, that there is so much more that he wants to do. And how this is framed around Mike Peterson, who was great to see show back up, and that it being a psychological, that it comes down to all of this. The past 5 years has been brief flashes of consciousness as he is dying on the table from being stabbed through the chest by Loki. Again, bringing it all back to the beginning. And how, in some ways, these 5 years do make sense in that manner of all the things that he had wanted to do. Travel to space, have a flying car, the relationships that he wanted to have, the more, close relationships to May, or even Constance's years back, to the fatherly relationship with Daisy, to bring to all of these ideas, even all the internal conflicts that he has had. I think that it was such a beautifully framed, and again, subtle. We're not dealing with the physical attack, really. We're dealing with the more subtle psychological fears of getting him to give up, and doing it by undercutting his reality so perfectly, so beautifully, point for point. I thought it was a great way, again, to reference what has happened over these years and put it in a very interesting framework that works within the small storyline of the episode. It's sort of a perfect way of doing that, because often you get these flashback episodes that just sort of tell bits of the story as time has gone on. Where this really honors the story. Yeah, you get these small flashbacks, you get these references. But it really works on those subtle fears of a nothing being real, that all of this was just a dream, was just a fantasy. And that it is bookended at the end perfectly, where we have the Quinjet landing, and opening up. And not only do we get Deathlok in person, Mike Peterson coming down, but everyone else, the huge battalion, the other agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. How we have in the beginning, there is no S.H.I.E.L.D. left. To Mike Peterson's the ghost of Peterson telling Phil, you're all on your own, there is nothing else. To where we see at that end, and I know it's a little extra from the particular scene, but it resonates so strongly in with it, that no, you are not alone, that there is a S.H.I.E.L.D. that will be there to fight with you. It was just such a perfect frame of the adventures of Phil over the past 5 years. A way of closing things off, if this ends up being the last season, or of just honoring what has happened and preparing to move forward if and when we get season 6. Oh, and it goes without saying that Deathlok was awesome in the episode. Great fight, great look, and a beautiful comic bit in the end, chatting with Dekes as we sit with our Fitzsimmons wedding. With all the ships that we have going on, this was the original. This was always there, and I loved how they referenced that we've got to do this quick. If we know anything, we can't wait a minute before things fall apart. Even after the wedding, even after the vows are spoken, and he's like, all right, let's get on. We got to get you married before this whole place disintegrates on itself. The idea that they are cursed and something can interrupt them at any moment was so constant in that scene. I thought was perfectly well done. We got all the feels, we got all the emotions, we got the learning of the Deke and the being the grandkid thing, but it was perfect. And great vows. Very nerd vows back and forth. Well, very nerdy on Gemma's side and just very heartfelt on Fitz's side. It was a beautiful scene, something we've been waiting for. Glad that it happened. All right, just a couple of small things. Oh, first off, Zima is not Haig. Not even close. Disappointment on Phil's face was palpable when Deke pulled that out. Phil's comment in the elevator, what are the chances of there being a Stay Puft Marshmallow Man out there? Appropriate, being that he was also an element of fear created to destroy you, being the manifestation of Gozar the Traveler. That was an awesome movie. You know, it's cool seeing those other manifestations of fear, you know, Lash, Hive. They didn't last long, though. Nice double team hit, though, by Phil and Deathlok there against Hive. It was cool. And there was an interesting line said when Coulson was kind of in that dream thinking that he was on the table and imagining the doctors around him and he was being operated on with the being stabbed by Loki. They said, Mr. Stark said give him anything he needs. Why Mr. Stark? I mean, I understand you want to get the good MCU reference and that's, you know, a recognizable name. But Coulson's an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. He was on the helicarrier. If anything, it should have been Director Fury said gives him anything that he needs. Also would be a fine reference. Why Stark? Now, I don't think they do anything by mistake. And I'm wondering if this is maybe foreshadowing of something else, a little bit more knowledge. One of our great viewers, The Rich Room, hey Rich, made a great comment. If everybody is on the most wanted list, Coulson's on the most wanted list, shouldn't the Avengers know that? The whole hiding of Coulson over the years has gotten ridiculous. But at this particular point, they have made him the most wanted person in America. You can't hide that. So, at the end of it, at some point, are we going to have a nice little Tony Stark show up and he's going to relieve everything, get rid of the military for him? I know that's reaching, just sort of making things up. But because they mentioned Mr. Stark there, and there's no particular reason why they should have mentioned him over Fury, I'm wondering if there is some sort of foreshadowing that that's hinting towards Infinity War. And I'm not sure if it was a show reference, if they're kind of making fun of their own genre, but when Fitz and Phil are talking, Fitz and Coulson are talking about Deathlok's arrival, that he just happened to show up right when they needed him. Also interesting that Deathlok kills himself. Just a little aside. But they did make that comment. It's interesting that he showed up right when he needed him. And they even said, yeah, that was convenient. Again, are they hinting at some bigger type thing going on? Are they just making fun of their own genre? I don't know, but these things stand out for a reason. Alright, so I think that pretty much covers everything. Now, next week, off to hunt for Gravitonium to try and fix the rift. So we've got Hail causing the rift, which causes them to go out and get... Hail's responsible for everything, because she uses the beacon as bait for S.H.I.E.L.D, which is going to call in the Kree, and then puts a bomb in the beacon, which blows up the monoliths, which causes the rifts. And now the team has to go and get Gravitonium in order to try and fix the rift, which is going to cause, of course, problems. We're going to have Graviton showing up, and the Kree's going to be there, and then the team's going to try and go up to the Kree in order to get more Kree blood to save Phil, and that's how the world blows up. Something like that. It's going to be a fun trip, isn't it? Anyway, thanks so much for joining me on this review, and thanks for being a fan of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. We all got to stick together. If you enjoyed this review, however, please go ahead and hit that like button. Thoughts, ideas, comments, throw those down in the section below. Now you can always catch me on Twitter and Instagram. I am at Darren Jakes. Subscribe if you're not a subscriber. It's quick, it's easy, you hit one button, you catch all these reviews. Plus, we've got Legion coming up, we're doing Walking Dead, we've got Westworld, lots of stuff, don't miss it all. We'll even throw some up right here you can check out. Anyway, that's going to be it for me. I'm D, and I'm out of here. I'll catch you guys next time. Bye-bye.